Okay, let's come over to the sewing machine, because this camera has a little bit more of a close-up. So right here at this front corner, I'm going to want to trim some of this seam allowance right here. To help facilitate this all turning up and in. And I just want to spend some time there and make sure that's looking really nice right there. So I don't want to trim too much. So I trim a little bit and then see if I can make that work. And then if I need, trim a little bit more. So just really taking my time with that little front corner. Oops, sorry. So making sure that all the seam allowance is tucked up in there, and that the seam allowance on the stand that's connected to the upper collar is going to cover it. And on the outside, that's going to look nice and smooth right there. So once I think I got that, I'll go ahead and do my usual pin to prep for stitch in the ditch. It's pretty thick right here with this placket. Okay, make sure I caught that. It's a little tight, so I'm going to do a little more adjusting. Pull a little bit more of that tiny seam allowance out, and then shove this corner back up in there. And again, sometimes for this fiddly little thing, hand basting, like taking a needle and thread, and instead of using pins, just sew it by hand with a needle and thread. Sometimes that works better on really fiddly little things like this, just to make sure that you get it perfect. Of course, we would never do that in mass production, but if you're trying to make your sample look nice, like to show the people who are supposed to be doing this for you, like the level of quality that you expect. Like you don't care how they do it, you just want it to look good. Then you can, in the design phase, the research and development phase, you can do fiddly things like hand basting, but it's not typical for what most of us are going to do. So I have a little bit of this pinned so far. I'm going to come back over to this side and fiddle with this other front corner. So make sure that my facing is shoved up in there, and wrap my collar around it. Looks like I have some threads I need to trim right here. And then shove my seam allowance up in there. Just really massage. Make sure that everybody's behaving. Look at it from the outside. Make sure that looks nice and smooth right there. So my pin for this will go this way. Okay, good. And then tuck that seam allowance up there. going to put a pin right here too. Okay. Big dress is dragging my sample off of the table here. Okay. So I'm kind of pinching it so I can flip it over, pin it into place. Make sure I got it. So there's my edge of my seam allowance right there below the pin. So I'm going to be okay. Or I should be. That pin should hold it so that I can do what I need to do. Now I'm going to do it by braille. Now that you've seen what I'm trying to achieve, I'm just going to feel from the inside. So I just felt the seam allowance is poking out. So I'll fold that under. So I'll fold it under, but make sure that it's covering that stitch. My next door neighbor has their music on really loud. And I don't live in an apartment, I live in a house, so he's like, I don't know, a few feet away. And we have trees between us, and our windows are closed. So, hopefully you like the music he's playing. Okay, so again I can feel that seam allowance is flipped out, so I'm going to tuck it back in. I'm going to double check and make sure that's going to work. Yeah. I'm going to take my upper collar little sign off because it's getting in my way right now. Okay, I'll do one more pin and then I'll see how that looks on the other side. So this is the side I'm going to be stitching from. So I just wanted to make sure. So like here I think I need another pin just to be safe. So right there. Because I just want to make sure that when I sew this, my aim is not to sew in on this collar, but my aim is to make sure that this, see that? I don't know if you can see that. Seam allowance is sticking out. I need to make sure that stays tucked in. So I'm gonna move this pin and recheck that. And I'll also wanna hold this label out of the way while I'm sewing. So I'll tuck that back and I'll pin that like that just so that it's not in my way while I'm doing this other thing. Now I'll come back on the outside. Pin that in place. All right. I think that looks like it's going to work. Okay, so we're ready to sew.